So let's go ahead and kick this webinar off. I would like to say good morning and welcome again. My name is JC Williams, and I am honored to represent Wholespire as part of the South Carolina Schools Network. The mission of the Schools Network is to identify and promote healthy eating and active living strategies in South Carolina public schools that empower key stakeholders and encourage collaboration among those seeking to improve student health and academic achievement.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Erica Ayers. I serve as the Executive Director for the South Carolina Governor's Council on Physical Fitness, as well as the School Wellness Consultant with DHEC. The Governor's Council mission is to improve and support the health of all South Carolinians through the advancement of physical activity. And we do this through prioritizing student health and fitness, which is why we collaborate with the Wholespire Schools Network. An example of this collaboration is this webinar series. And the purpose in this webinar series is to enhance the collaboration between schools and communities using the whole school, whole community, whole child model as a framework for student health. Today, with the WISC model, we will be focusing on employee wellness. It makes sense. It's the month of January, right? It's usually when we all take a pause from our busy lives to think about our own health and well-being. So we're very excited to have the healthy teacher here today to help us highlight the category of employee wellness.
Thank you, Erica. We'll give everyone about 10 more seconds to introduce yourself. A little bit about our session for today. Self-care has been a term thrown around a lot lately. Not only are practicalities rarely given, but the definition of self-care has been altered and is misunderstood frequently. The Healthy Teacher redefines self-care and offers a new perspective on what it looks like for educators. While covering the importance of mental health, nutrition, movement, and rest, we hope you will become empowered with the skills, knowledge, and resources needed to effectively reduce stress and anxiety during the school year. Every educator desires success in the classroom, and consistently using self-care practices can help make that happen. So we are excited to have everyone with us today. We've got people representing state agencies, community coalitions, school staff and teachers, and even a few other professions joining us. Our speakers today are Reagan McCullough and Lauren Ross. Reagan was raised in a family of over 17 educators in the small town of Iva, South Carolina. Though she has always had the desire to teach, she wanted to tackle a different subject than the rest of her family. Reagan dreamed of owning her own personal training company where she could help people live mentally and physically empowered. In 2016, Reagan graduated from Clemson University, where she took her first year studying food science and finished with a major in communication studies with a minor in education. After college, Reagan completed her PT certification and joined Lauren under Freedom Fitness Personal Training, LLC, where, due to knowing so many, she ended up training multiple educators. During this time, Reagan realized that many of the trials she witnessed her family of educators endure could have been lessened or prevented by simple health practices. From there, you guessed it, the Healthy Teacher was born. The Healthy Teacher has been implemented in 13 states and has over 1,500 members. Lauren and Reagan enjoy traveling America, highlighting the fundamentals of health and the power of one's thoughts and words. They recently opened a second business specifically for mental health called Dan McCullough Affirmations, which offers every person the chance to be encouraged and affirmed. Lauren Ross grew up playing multiple sports and progressed to being a college athlete at Western Carolina University. While there, Lauren set numerous records and discovered her passion for health and fitness. Upon graduating, Lauren set out to become a personal trainer. She trained under Mr. USA, who won fourth place in a bodybuilding competition, taught PE and music at a small South Georgia school, and in 2016 opened her own personal training company, Freedom Fitness. With 9 years and over 13,000 hours of personal training under her belt, Lauren has worked with many overworked, stressed, and burnt out educators. Around 90% 98% of these educators were on anxiety medication and either lowered their dosage or concluded their prescriptions. With Lauren's understanding of proper health and fitness, she knew her work could empower educators physically, mentally, and emotionally. Thus, the healthy teacher was born. The healthy teacher, as we mentioned earlier, has had a huge impact, and now we are excited to turn it over to Lauren and Reagan.
All righty. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're super excited. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. For a second there, I thought that you said that we were in 30 states, and I was like, whoop, whoop, that's the goal. But right now we are just in we've been in 13 states. We're moving into 14 this year, so it's super exciting. But 30, I claim that right now. I'll take that. Love it. Thank you so much for introducing us, and again, for everyone in attendance. It's exciting to see that we have a lot of school staff here. I saw Manning listed about twice. So Manning, y'all are doing it. I think the principal's even here. That means a lot when your leadership is seeking avenues for wellness for their staff as well. So we just wanted to dive in first and talk about, give an introduction to ourselves. That was an amazing intro, so it's going to save us a lot of time here, but I'm going to dive into my personal story, and then Lauren's going to do the same. So again, I'm Reagan McCullough, and yes, it's true, I have about 17 educators in my family, 2 of which were my parents. So those of you who have children, you know that when you come home, it does affect the family lifestyle and family balance, and I was able to experience that firsthand. My mom was building a charter school in South Carolina, the first charter in South Carolina, by the way. So it was something that no one knew how to do in the state, and it was very stressful. So she would come home and go straight to the bed, like super exhausted. So my dad was taking on, multiple roles at the house willingly. He wanted to, and he was also a middle school guidance counselor. Now, if anyone here is within middle school, you know that's when the boyfriend-girlfriend drama gets real and heated. And those issues seem to be as big as World War II. Like, it is what consumes our life in middle school. So my dad was dealing with that, but not only that, but actually the more serious issues that you face when you're a guidance counselor. And that's hearing the students' personal stories of abuse, neglect, not having enough food at home. And by law, you're not allowed to speak to anyone about these issues unless someone needs to step in. So my daddy was holding on extra weight. And I want to be clear here that I know he was a guidance counselor and he heard those stories in more detail probably than some teachers do, but that does not change the fact that you as an educator, wherever you are within the school building, you have come in contact with stories that leave you walking away with the thought of, how can I just leave that story there in that environment and not take that home with me? So my dad was doing laundry one day, and he looked at me in a way that I wasn't used to him looking, and he was a jokester. But when I look back and I see his face, it was just different. He was doing laundry and he said, "You guys just aren't going to know what to do when I'm not here anymore." And I kind of like laughed it off and walked out the door. And 2 weeks later, at the age of 16, I was in my social studies class and I heard a knock on the door. And the vice principal said, "Can I have Reagan McCullough?" He pulled me out of the class and he said, "Your dad's had a heart attack. Your cousin's going to rush you to the hospital." And within 42, maybe 72 hours, honestly, the hours ran together. The doctor was walking into the room and telling us that my dad was no longer here with us. And I was having to ask myself that question, what do I do without him here anymore? And come to find out, his peer, he had been talking to his peers within the last 2 weeks, and he kept telling them, "Y'all, I've forgotten to refill my blood thinning medication, but I'm going to get it refilled Friday." And they'd come to him like, "Dan, did you get it refilled?" "No, I'm going to do it this Friday." Well, let me tell you, it was a Friday that I was pulled out of my classroom. And I just spoke to my eldest cousin this year, and he said, "Reagan, you know, I was the first one to meet your dad at the hospital." I said, "No, I didn't know that." He said, "Yeah, your dad looked at me and he said, 'Jared, I've really messed up. When we get so consumed with this mentality of putting others before ourselves as the right thing to do, the subconscious thought is that self-care is selfish. And we're really going to hone in today on what that actually looks like, especially for an educator, because you guys are patted on the back for carrying more roles, for overworking, for getting there early, leaving late. It's like a gold medal when you're overworked. And that at the end of the day, if it's creating this lifestyle where you're putting yourself on the back burner, like my dad, there can be some serious consequences. And Lauren and I have heard stories, and we're confident to say that we've helped educators not walk down the same pathway that my dad did.
Yeah, so my story is different from Reagan's, but they both end up in the same spot. I was a teacher for 2 years, and I noticed, so prior to that, I had been a personal trainer for 3 or 4 years. I got into teaching and noticed that the vast majority of the educators that I worked with were they just figured out how to operate within the education system, which was kind of like grind, crash. And that was what they knew, that's just how they knew to operate in that environment. And so I was able to give them very, very simple, not easy, but simple practicalities, like going to sleep at a good time, drinking more water, just things along those lines. And watched it drastically change the way that they taught, but also the way that they operated at home as well. Fast forward a few years, and I've opened up Freedom Fitness, and had hired Reagan on at this time. And we worked with so many educators one-on-one. Together, we have about 15,000 hours of one-on-one personal training experience. And we noticed, or at least I noticed, every single educator I worked with the exception of one, was on some form of anxiety medication. I want to stop. There is a time and a place for medication. I believe it's beautiful. I believe it's amazing that we have those avenues, but it was a massive red flag to me when none of those teachers were on any sort of medication prior to teaching. We also noticed that after a few months of working with us, they either came completely off of the medications or they lowered their dosages exponentially. And so we were like, okay, there seems to be some red flags. We have some form of a solution. Is there anything specifically for educators out there from a health and wellness standpoint? And we noticed that there were things for students, tons of avenues for students, and even tons of avenues for community, which is all needed. But what is there for the people who are supposed to be pouring into all these other people? And we couldn't find anything. We spent months trying to look up to see if there was anything like what we wanted to create. Couldn't find anything. And so we were like, we'll just make it. And in 2017, that process started. And 2018, we took a pilot group through, realized it was not good, and we had to revamp the whole thing. And revamped it, and then launched again in 2020 during the very, very middle of COVID. I think it was August of 2020. And luckily from there, it just kind of took off, and we've been able to grow ever since. And now we're here.
Uh-oh, guys, I gave you a preview. Hang on one second. Everyone needs something to look forward to, right? We'll give away some of our secrets. Okay. All right. So we wanted to give you guys exactly what we do and just kind of give you a picture of it. So you can see here on what we do, one of our main aspects of the Healthy Teacher is our Healthy Teacher platform. At the end of our presentation, you'll have a QR code that links to a little preview of inside the Healthy Teacher platform. But basically and overall is that when we go into districts and schools and we break their staff into teams, we have what we call plunges, which are biweekly bonus point opportunities. What you see here, I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse or not, but on the more THT goodness, you'll see plunges down there, and you'll see the pink flamingo. That's one of our favorite things to do. We send the schools these blow up flamingos that carry water in them, and you have to go around the school and find an opposing participant. And if you present them the flamingo with water in it, whatever they're doing, they have to drop to one knee and chug the water while you record it and post it on our private Facebook group for the Healthy Teacher Games. It is hilarious. People have taken this out in the freezing cold and put it in people's mailboxes at home, on their doors. It's hilarious. So we've had a lot of fun with our plunges. But we also do in-person events and our well-being course. So the well-being course is where we meet with schools on a 4-week basis, and we break down self-care in the life of an educator. So you can see, like, on week 1, we're going to be we kind of cover a little bit of what we cover today. And then week 2, we go deeper, like realizing your personal needs and learning how to shift your mindsets, which we're going to talk a little bit about mindsets today. And then week 3, we go a little bit deeper and teach our people how to say no and when it's appropriate to say no. And then end with redefining self-love. But overall, like Lauren said, we've had lots of success stories and testimonies, and that's what keeps us going here, is hearing the personal effects of the healthy teacher, because we not only have I seen it in my personal life of where if my dad had a resource like this, his story might look a little bit different. He was a very healthy individual. He had literally, he had the solution. It's take your blood thinning medications and you'll be a-okay, sir. And when you get so caught up in the life of serving others, it's so easy to forget even the most simplistic things that help us survive and sustain life. So what we've realized with our educators is that the overall mindset is that self-care is selfish. So we believe wherever we are in the nation, when we're talking to educators, the first question we have them answer is, what is the definition of self-care? So we're going to stop right here and do that. Write down 1 to 3 examples of self-care. And if you don't have a pen and paper in front of you, that's okay. Think about it. And then I want you to really think, like, why is this self-care? What about this makes it self-care? Whenever you feel like it's
good. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of times we have been taught that self-care is doing something for ourselves. And in some ways, at least within the education field that we found, it's almost been like weaponized against teachers. And I think we saw a few nurses as well. And I'm pretty sure it's the same concept, same idea in that realm as well. Like, if you're not choosing self-care, then you have to, it's basically been a weaponized thing. And it should be something that is used to cause peace and rest and joy, not this like anxiousness of performing self-care. And so self-care is not doing things for yourself. All those things that I feel like were mentioned, there was like exercise and Reagan, I think you mentioned yoga, the hair appointment. All of those things are acts that can lead to self-care, and they're really, like, for a lot of people, they are the best ways to lead people into self-care. But self-care is not necessarily doing things for yourself. Self-care is choosing to actually be with yourself. And so the hair appointment, the doing things for yourself can give you the space to rest, and you give your mind a chance to rest so that you can actually be honest with yourself, be with yourself, and be honest with where you're at.
Yeah.
So self-care is not doing things for yourself, rather it's being with yourself. And I mentioned like being honest, and I think there are two very big differences in this category, within the education field, we've seen this one group of people who literally everything can be going up in flames, and they have this idea of like everything's fine. Nothing's a problem. Everything's great. I'm great. And it's this fake it to make it mindset. Like if I lie enough, or if I tell myself that things are fine enough, then they're just going to eventually be fine. And that's not the case. Fake it till you make it, in my opinion, is one of the worst lies we've been taught. It is not fake it till you make it. It should be face it until you trace it. So look those things in the face that are problems, that are issues, and trace them back to the root issue. Doing that solves that issue, so you don't have to sit in these like flames anymore. And people who tend to have this sort of a mindset, and I feel like I can fall into this mindset sometimes as well. We've become very good at trying to compartmentalize things, but what we don't realize is the reason that we have trouble sleeping at night, or the reason why we feel these like have these stints where we're just like, hey, this is almost feels like a panic attack, is because we're not dealing with things, and we're trying to compartmentalize, and we get so many things. It's like trying, like when company comes over unannounced and you have to throw everything into a closet or everything into a room, and eventually you can't fit anything else in there, and then the door busts open, and we have to deal with those things. And so we have the one group that's kind of like everything's fine group. Let's just be ducks and let it roll off our, like water off a duck's back, like let it roll off our backs type deal. But then we have this other group who the very smallest thing can happen and their whole day's ruined. So it's everything sucks, everything's horrible, everything's awful. And the truth is, everything's not awful. Everything's not always great either. But those two swings of the pendulum create really poor mindsets in people. And a lot of times they come from the same place, but they're two different avenues coming from the same place, and it's avoidance. Trying to avoid dealing with hard things, either due to a fear of realizing, and I don't think people realize it's just like fear of realizing that things are worse off, or this fear that you're like, oh man, I might come to a point and I might like open that closet and just get drowned with all the stuff in there. Or it's I don't want to actually deal with it because I have this fear of looking bad, or this fear of not being able to control the situation. And I know that once I come to terms with that, or admit that, I have to deal with my idea of perfectionism.
That's good.
And so in either case, typically the root issue is only one thing. And it can be very different depending on who you are. And it's kind of like standing in did you guys ever do those like mirror rooms growing up, where it's just like a ton of mirrors and you have to like find your way through and you run into the wall and stuff like that? It's normally like fairs or festivals or things like that. That's what I feel like all of those issues are. And it's one thing, but it's reflecting off of 100 different mirrors. So it makes it look like it's a massive amount of things. But if you were to take all the mirrors away, it ends up being just one issue. So with that being said, I want to challenge you guys to really be honest with where you're at. And you may be in a great place, and that's awesome. You don't have to have like something going on. But if you've noticed, or if you've experienced just like random panic attacks or things like that, it might be because you haven't dealt with things or been honest with where you're at.
Good. Okay, so I think something that's really important to note here is that we get to this place where we have mindsets about ourselves because of what we've experienced. And we've seen that it's very important for educators, especially, to step back and analyze how we get to this place of having this mindset of like, let's say if you're being honest with yourself and you realize that you believe that you're not a good teacher, okay? Or I'm not worth even being in this classroom teaching these students, or I'm not good enough to be here. And you can apply that into any occupational field that you're here under. So that is our step number 3. We begin to act and make choices and make assumptions based off of this mindset. But we want to take you back to step number 1, flag number 1 over here, and really get to talk about how it is the mindsets are formed based off our self-talk, the thoughts that go on inside of our head on a day-to-day basis, the imagination that we play with. How many know that your imagination, your mind cannot tell the difference between imagination and real life? And when I say that, it takes a lot of people off guard. But I want to give you just a very simple proving factor. Have any of you ever woke up from a dream crying? Woke up from a dream in fear? Or woke up in a dream ill at your significant other because you dreamed they cheated on you that night? You know, like if you wake up with these emotions, but throughout the entire night, all you were doing is dreaming and playing with your imagination, that in itself is a very basic proof that our mind, our emotions, the chemicals that are sent throughout our body are not based off of facts. They're based off of self-talk, thoughts, and imagination. And those chemicals then, affect our hormones, our attitudes, which lead to our beliefs and our perspective. So we're just going to use the example of waking up, having the dream that your significant other cheated on you. When you wake up that morning, you're going to wake up with an attitude and maybe with a little bit of like questioning, and your perspective has changed, and your significant other is like, yeah, that was just a dream. I didn't really do that. And you're like, yeah, but in my dream you did. So you need to go make me some coffee and be nice today, because I'm just not going to be able to take it. And that leads to your actions, your choices, and your assumptions, not only for that day, maybe for a dream, maybe for that specific dream, it can be for that day, but for something that's more prominent to your identity, like not being a good enough, fill in the blank. That's going to lead to some major habits, a cycle of events that can, if we went back to the source of where did this start, like how is my self-talk enabling this or disabling this? How is my imagination playing with this? That will in turn affect the overarching belief and actions that create habits. Before we dive into a deeper realm of how our habits actually form and why they matter, we want to really hone in on a quick tidbit with language and words. And I'm going to let Lauren, you say this way better than me, so I'm going to let you take this.
Yeah, I just want to make a point to what Reagan was saying earlier. I think one of the ways that we can tell if we have poor self-talk is we have, in culture in general, we have deemed self-deprecating talk out loud as jokes. Talking poorly about yourself is a funny thing to do, just culturally. And I feel like it really is seen in students, and it comes from a space of feeling insecure. And so you say poor things about yourself because if you say them and then somebody else repeats it, they didn't really say that about you. You said it about yourself. And so it's not someone else thinking poorly about you. It's you creating that space so that they don't even have the opportunity to. So it stems from a place of feeling insecure. And either you continue with that insecurity or you continue with those habits. And we don't even realize that we are speaking so poorly over ourselves and we're calling them jokes. But that really is a way that I've seen in myself and in a lot of other people that I've worked with. Hey, let's if you cut out, if for whatever you're doing with your health, You can continue eating the same way, sleeping the same way, moving the same way. Cut out the jokes that are like poorly about yourself and watch how many things change in a positive way for you. Anyway, sorry, back to language, which I guess that went into it too. Has anybody ever heard the phrase, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me? Literally trash. Trash. I hate that saying because it's not true. It is not true. Your words, my words have power. Like the example I was just talking about. There are short and long-term effects to the things that we speak over ourselves or that we allow other people to speak over us. Our words have power. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this in like real life. I feel like everyone's heard of the placebo effect. If you haven't, it's where I give you a sugar pill. If you have a headache and I tell you, hey, this is going to cure your headache, you take it and it cures your headache.
Hey,
but
first,
yeah.
before you go in, Lauren, let's answer this poll real quick.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Cool. Okay, so placebo, like I just mentioned, is the sugar pill effect, and it typically creates something positive. The nocebo phenomenon is literally the complete opposite. So it's telling you something negative can happen or negative will happen, and then it happens even though it's not supposed to happen. Example. There are a few really good examples that we have from a research standpoint. So we have over 10,000, I think 100,000 examples of the placebo effect, literally starting early like 1900s. With the nocebo phenomenon, we've only studied this from like a research evidence-based standpoint since about 2000, like early 2000s. So we don't have a ton of research on it, but what we do is really, really eye-opening. So one of the things they did, they took about 100,000 people with chronic back pain, and they split them up into two groups. And they said, hey, we're going to do a leg extension and flexion exercise, which is literally just sitting in a chair, taking the bottom half of your leg, lifting it up and putting it back down. That's it. That's all it is. They told one group, this is going to have no bearing on your back pain. We just want to see how well you perform the movement. The other group, they said, this will have some sort of bearing on your back pain. We want you to tell us what percentage at the end. Both groups say, cool. They go through it all. They fill out a survey at the end. The group that they told would not have any bearing on their back pain, they asked them the question, what percentage did this increase your back pain? 0, all of them, all the way down. The other group, they said, what percentage did this affect your back pain? The lowest percentage was 70%. The lowest. So you have a ton of people saying 0% because they were told it would have 0%. And then this other group, they were told this will affect your back pain negatively, said at minimum, it increased their back pain by 70%. Another really good example that I think lots we can all relate to. So they took this group of women. This was a much like smaller, I think there was like 20 women in this study. And they said that they were going to send them out into job interviews, but they were going to put these scars all over their faces, like makeup scars all over their faces. And they wanted to see the biases the people who were doing the hiring would have because they walked in with scars. So they did all of their makeup and they showed them their faces, like with all the scarred makeup on it. And then they said, actually, we're going to come back and do one more touch up and then we'll send you in. They took all of the scars off and then sent them back in. So no woman had scars on their face, but they thought they had scars on their faces. Every single female came back and said that there were massive biases during the interview because of the scars on their face that weren't there. So when we have this idea in our minds it's very easy to run with, and you will see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Whatever you have in your mind is whatever will be the most prominent to your perspective, to your vision.
That's good. Okay, who's heard of neural pathways? Anyone? Anyone? Everyone? So neural pathways are, it's like a pathway between two neurons, which forms a connection or a meaning to an experience that you've had. Meaning that our perception, our understanding of something comes from an experience. So what happens when we have these negative perceptions? And number one, we don't know how they got there. And number two, we don't know how to get rid of them.
Yeah.
We are going to hit on what we consider a person who has an alpha mind. And before you can have an alpha mind, you have to realize how exactly these perceptions, these understandings happen. So that way, when you are honest with yourself in these moments of self-care, you can know exactly how to heal from it. Okay, so neurons can communicate to each other through our five senses. Okay, so that's our sight, smell, taste, touch, and what we hear. But let's be real. We can't always help what we come in contact with. We can't always help we can't control what other people are doing around us, what events are happening around us. I mean, it's not, let's go back to a memory that all of us can, well, most all of us, you know, some youngsters are probably in here. I'm jealous of you, by the way. Most of us can relate to 9/11. We remember where we were when that happened. Okay, but we didn't, I'm not sure if we can't help that happened around us, but we do remember exactly what happened. And I bet you that in that moment, there was more that has been stained in your membrane than just what you saw. I'm going to give you an example. So my dad wore this certain cologne. Okay. And not other day, it was like 3 months ago, this man walks in, and it's been since 2010 since my daddy passed away. This man walks in, he smelled just like my dad. And I looked at Lauren out of nowhere. I looked at Lauren, I was like, Lauren, oh my gosh, that I just like thought of my dad. Like, he reminds me of my dad. And I had to think, what was it? It wasn't his facial features. It wasn't his clothes. And I was like, oh my word, it was the smell. And so that got me started to thinking. And I thought like, oh, I can remember exactly what my 4th grade classroom smelled like. And sometimes I'll walk into boutiques and I'm like, oh, it smells just like my 4th grade classroom. That smell, it's not sight. Another thing is touch. It's like when I touch certain things, it takes me back to a memory. And all of this is because it's in our neural pathways. An example that we like to use is one time, this is a made up story. We like to pretend, like, take everyone back to, let's say you're 5 years old. Okay, 5 years old, you're sitting around a bonfire, you're smelling the fire, you're doing s'mores, you smell the s'mores, you taste the taste of the graham cracker in your mouth. And then all of a sudden, behind you comes up this, we'll say this lady, and she's wearing a red ball cap. And she comes up behind you and she goes, and scares you. And you turn around and you like are in this moment of fear. Now, what happens with extreme intense moments or feelings like fear is like all of your 5 senses are flash frozen in your mind and stained as a trigger or a red flag for that experience. So next time you know it, maybe you're 18 years old now and you're walking down the road, you see a female with a red hat and you're like, wait, my body feels uneasy and I don't know why. It could be because of the experience of 5 years old, a female in a red hat scared you. Now, does that mean we need to carry that for the rest of our life and be triggered every time we see a female in a red hat? No, it doesn't. A lot of people think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But the thing is, our mind is malleable. It can change, it can grow, it can adapt, and it can mold into what we want it to. So that way we don't have to walk around with these red flags in places that they don't deserve to be. So the example I just gave you was an example of fear. But what about an example that directly affects your identity? An example that could go directly into the classroom that our children are in on a day-to-day basis. Lauren has a personal story, and I think this is just fantastic for how neural pathways form. And then we'll get into being alpha-minded and how to heal.
I was 8 years old in the 3rd grade, and I had a friend or a classmate who sat in front of me, and we got these test papers back, and I made like a few points lower than her, still like a high grade. And she turned around in front of our whole class. She said, "Well, you're just dumb." And in that moment, something happened. It was, I'm sure, part of the embarrassment, part of like I was like frozen, literally like frozen, didn't know what to say. I believed I was dumb, like deep in my identity. I believed that I was dumb. And I carried that belief until I was out of college. So for the next 12, however many years that is, I carried that, and I was a terrible student. Very, very smart, but I was a terrible, terrible student, and I had no idea that I was smart. And so what would happen, because I had this belief that I was dumb, I wouldn't study for tests, because why would you study if you're dumb anyway? That was my mindset without realizing it. But then I would get my test papers back, and they would be low scoring. And I wouldn't think, oh, it's because I didn't study. I would think, I have a low score because I'm dumb. And so this cycle literally continued, this like self-sabotaging cycle without me realizing it happened until I was outside, like out of college. And I was around a group of people who really like chose to pour into me and chose to say, I remember one of the comments, the first time I like started to believe like, maybe I'm smart. I was in this group of people and we were just having this discussion, and a kind of like a mentor of mine, without realizing it at the time, was like, "You are really wise beyond your years." And I was like, okay. And so that was one of the first times I remember believing that I was something other than dumb. And so I had this group of people who continued to tell me that, and eventually I believed it. I started to believe it. But it was also, I also stopped telling myself I was dumb. I also stopped making the comments and I've caught myself doing this a few times, but there was this like little saying that I would say that I'm like, well, I'm just a personal trainer. No, you're a lot more than that. And so instead of just saying like, I'm just this, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, I started to tell myself like, actually, you're very wise. I am very, very wise. In school, I could read a paragraph 100 times and I could not tell you what I was reading. It wasn't that I wasn't trying. I would sit in every type of environment you could imagine. I would try with everything turned off, with everything turned on, a mix of everything. And I just couldn't tell you, even something that I really enjoyed learning about, I couldn't, it was like my mind wouldn't allow me to retain the knowledge. Now, I can read something one time and almost quote it back to you verbatim. It's not that that just happened naturally. It's something that I always had in me, but my mind wouldn't allow me because of the beliefs that I carried in me.
That's good. So we're going to take her story and I'm going to show you how our 5 senses affected this, creating a neural pathway in her, a habit that she lived out of until after graduating college. So she initially heard it, and then she saw herself make another bad grade on the test, on a test, and then she felt it. After she saw herself act in the way that the girl, affirmed her in, that affirmed it in herself, and she felt it. And then she began to speak it. I'm just dumb. And when you speak that and it becomes part of your thought process, then it's digested. It's something you taste. And when it's something you taste, it puts it on a different level for you. It really digs it down into your core, into that neural pathway, and it becomes this routine of thought, which will become a routine of action, which will become a routine that people see you and observe you doing. And so then they will, again, affirm you in that. And this is not a positive affirmation all the time, like in Lauren's example. But when we know this, we can rise up higher to another level of mentality, and that's the mentality of having an alpha mind. And an alpha-minded person realizes that every single negative thought about themselves, always, 100%, has always stemmed from something outside of yourself. You were not born into this world thinking that you're not enough. You were not born into this world thinking that you're dumb. Fill in the blank.
Yeah,
that's something that you observed someone else, either their body movement or their facial expressions. You assumed that that's that they were saying that about you, or that you were taught, or someone spoke over you. But any negative thought is not something that was created within you.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, we need to back up and figure out where it came into play. When did we start believing this? Now, a lot of people will use this as, a quick dopamine rush, and like I get excited, like I have this information, and now I feel like because I have this information, I've done my work for the day. But we really, really want to encourage you guys to take this time of self-care, this next year of self-care, of focusing on being honest with yourself in these moments so that you can heal. So who are my cat people? If you're a cat person, raise your hand. Whoop, whoop, cat people. Awesome. All right. Well, I threw this picture of cats in there just for y'all because it ain't us. We are not the cat people. We are the dog people in the house. Whoop, whoop. Awesome. Awesome. So we have these pictures in here. The cats are covering up in a blanket. The dog's covering up in a blanket. What's happening here, what we're saying is that we don't want you to use this as a dopamine rush. We want you to use it as a tool and a resource for yourself to plunge you forward for this next year in your efforts of self-care. So with that being said, we're talking about you. Don't cover up. Don't rush through this. Allow yourself this year to step forward in self-care and being honest.
Good. All right. So every lie that you have ever believed, any lie that you will ever believe in the future, stems from one of three places. It's going to be the beliefs about the world around you, the beliefs about another person, or the beliefs about yourself. It will never come from anything else. So, beliefs about the world. Has anybody ever heard the phrase, the world's going to hell in a handbasket? I feel like I heard that growing up from everyone over the age of 60, like when I was like a young, like elementary school kid. And now I feel like the age of people saying it is lower and lower and lower. Like as I've gotten older, it's like come down, which I guess I've gotten older, so it kind of meets in the middle. The truth is the world's not going to hell in a handbasket. We've always had the issues that I think we're starting to see that and starting to like come to light. Now, these have always been issues, but because of having access to the entire world in our pockets, we're able to see things that have always been. They're just highlighted now so that we have to deal with them. We can't ignore them. We can't set them aside. We can't act like they're not there. And when we don't deal with the issues, like we talked about before, about being honest with ourselves, when we don't deal with those things and we try and compartmentalize them or push them away, it becomes very overwhelming and it can feel like the world's going to hell in a handbasket. But I want to suggest that being able to see these issues and having these issues brought to light is actually a sign of improvement. I remember somebody telling me one time, sometimes the way forward is to go back to the beginning. Because if you are walking in the wrong direction, you have to go back to the start in order to get to the right direction. Also, if the world's going to hell in a handbasket, put down the basket. You don't have to carry it. You can put out the fire. We have that ability. We have that ability for change, to bring about something different. We have that in us now. And being able to step into that space is such an empowering place to be. Next thing is our beliefs about another person. All right. Has anybody ever used the phrase, "they made me so mad"? I'm pretty sure I said that about Reagan last week.
Like yesterday.
Yeah. Like, he or she makes me so mad. When we make this statement, what we don't realize we're doing, we are giving that other person every bit of power that is supposed to be ours. That is our power. We're saying, you know what? I'm giving you the ability to make me mad. And that ability to control my emotions, that space of allowing anybody else to control my emotions, it's like an anchor on a ship. So we're a ship, our emotions are our anchor. And if somebody else has the ability to move them wherever, they get to take us wherever they want us to go. That means we give up every bit of power, and every direction we want to move in, we are allowing another person to move us. So
we have a poll here.
Oh, yeah.
So I put up 2 more examples. She didn't wave at me, so she must not like me. He didn't text me back, so I guess he thought I was blank, blank, blank. You can insert it here. If you put that poll up, I want to know if anyone's ever experienced something similar to this, where we, like Lauren was saying, like we handed our power to someone else based off an assumption. A lot of times that person has no clue that they had this power, or that you gave them this power. I'm one of the people who, if you have your messages on read and you allow people to see that you read them, then you better answer as soon as you read it. Because if you're letting me see that you've read my message and you're not responding, like, why did you just do that to my mental state? That's just not fair. And a lot of times the real story behind it could be that, oh, they had the chance. Well, number one, they may have accidentally opened your message and it says read. There should be like a preview option where they just previewed your message. They didn't really read it, or a skim option. But when it says that they read it, they may not have actually got to read it, or they don't have the time at that moment to respond back to you. But instead of thinking of all, the positive options here, it's so much easier to think, oh my word, they didn't want to respond back to me. What are they? Do they not like me anymore? What's going on? And we just start to play with these thoughts, which will again lead to a negative mindset, negative actions, and negative assumptions about people. And what does that do at the end of the day? It doesn't affect the person on the other end of the text message. It affects us and our attitude, and in turn, how we treat people.
Yeah.
So
And
we've all experienced this somewhere and sometime.
yeah, and I think going to an even like bigger spectrum with this, Reagan was talking about, most people don't know, like they're not trying to upset you. Their intentions are good. They're not like carrying malice intent in their actions and the things that they're doing. And so bringing it up to them instead of assuming allows you to take that power back and saying like, hey, like when you did this is what I thought. These are my assumptions behind this. And then you can talk about it. And so then that idea of the power dynamic of giving somebody else your power, you're able to take it back because you're being honest and you're allowing someone and yourself to meet you where you're actually at, not where you're pretending to be. And so if you get nothing else from this webinar, healing and self-care cannot meet you where you pretend to be. It can only meet you where you're at.
Good.
And so with that, some people they're not trying to upset you, but also if they do have malice intent and you understand that, why give them your power anyway?
That's good.
Because they're not going to carry it well. They're not going to take you to any place you want to go. So why give it to them? Why give them that ability to control your emotions in that manner? So like we were saying before, words and actions are like winds to a sail. Okay. And allowing someone to take you where they want to go is not what we want. We want to have an anchor, and that anchor, instead of allowing people to carry it, that anchor is hope. Like actual, real, deep hope. But hope in what? Because I can't put my hope in the fact that I'm a good personal trainer. I can't put my hope in the fact that I'm a good business partner or a good entrepreneur, because then one thing can crush that, right? Having this hope can't be put into a label.
That's good.
Labels are for foods, not for people. Your hope can't be put into how good you do something, because the second I label myself as a personal trainer or an entrepreneur, I give myself parameters, meaning I am only good if I stay within this box, right? The second I step outside of that box, or the second that something else that's not supposed to be in the box comes in, I'm no longer a good whatever. So it's not hope in this label that you have deemed yourself as. It is hope in you as a human being, yourself. Like just you. There is no box for that. You have no, there should be no label. There should be a freedom in that. And in that space, that's the space that you're going to be able to come back to lies and figure out what lies are there and be honest with yourself without feeling this guilt or shame for feeling those things. And so when we move into beliefs about ourselves, but oh, you can take this one, right?
Oh, okay. I'm going to just put these pictures up here. So, what happens with beliefs about ourselves is we tend to believe things or claim things as our identity based off of our experiences. It's what we basically repeated throughout this entire presentation. One example is, I'm going to just skip what we have on the screen. I'm going to give you an example that literally happened this week in my life because I need to vent about it. Okay. So, last Thursday, I was driving my mom's car, her new car, and I hit a pothole and the tire busted. I'm like, okay, that's okay. We'll get a new tire. That's fine. All right. Well, then 3 days later, I'm now driving my own vehicle and on a completely different highway. Again, I hit a pothole and I was like, I'm fine. Everything's good. Go get my tire pressure changed. And my tires, checked out. And they're like, yeah, Reagan, your tire is going to bust at any moment now. You're going to need a new tire. I'm like, I literally just bought a tire for my mom for a pothole 4 days ago. I can't believe this is happening to me. So I kind of laughed it off as a funny. But on my trip back home after getting my new tire, I called my mom. I was like, you won't believe what happened. Like, I just ran into another pothole this weekend, had to get another tire. And Mama, I had this thought, like, is this just going to be my life? And I just laughed it off. And I'm like, but no, I'm not claiming that as my life. I hung up the phone with my mom after having this conversation of not claiming things as my identity based off my experiences. And bam, hit another pothole last night. Currently, as we speak, my car is getting another tire put on it. This is 3 tires and 3 potholes in 7 days. And I have the option here just to claim this is like, my life is terrible. Potholes hate me. I hate South Carolina roads and they hate me back. But instead of taking my external situation and claiming it as my internal identity, I have a choice to not believe the lie that I'm experiencing right now, because it is so easy to say, is this just my life now? Am I just a pothole hitter and a tire buster? And it's a very funny example, but this can go very deep with you of your experiences in teaching, your experiences in your marriage, your experiences with your children, your experiences with your family. We're going to hit very light, and you can take this as deep as you want. But what happens when you have these lies about yourself is you tend to be more problem focused than solution focused, and more past focused than present focused. And that can be very, very dangerous if we're not careful. We have a poll here, but for the sake of time, we're just going to go right into how do I handle these negative neural pathways that have been created in my life. How do I become responsible for them and take action? It's more simple than you think. Growth can happen with just a 1% change daily, weekly, monthly. This can turn into a new habit. It can turn into a new neural pathway when you start at that flag number 1 of self-talk, thoughts, and imagination. You see that you can change flag 3, which is your actions, your assumptions, and your daily habits. It can make a massive difference when you make a 1% change of your thoughts, of your words, and what's happening inside your mind. So we have 3 questions for you guys. And Lauren, did you want to say anything?
Just that I think it can be really easy to try and do the 0 to 100 type deal. But for anybody who has tried to go 0 to 100, you realize at some point you have not built a foundation to carry that 100. And so the truth is you don't need 0 to 100, you need 0 to 1. And you need to lay that 1% of the foundation. And then that 1% becomes your 0 because it becomes your normal. So then you lay another 1% and another 1%. And so it's never 0 to 100. It's always 0 to 1. Everything you're doing is 0 to 1. And then you realize 1 year, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years down the road, your life is completely different in a good.
That's good. So these are the 3 questions that we ask our educators. And if you want to take a screenshot, if you want to write them down, these questions, asking yourself these, can turn your life around.
Yeah.
So what is one negative thought that you believe about the world, people around you, or yourself? And then what is that 1% action? And the third one is a question, what is the affirmation? But it's also something like, it's a statement to the 1% action. The 1% action can be your affirmation. It can be waking up in the morning and telling yourself, I'm good enough for this. Like, I am strong. I am courageous. Whatever your lie is, if you speak the opposite, again, we're not trying to, fake it till we make it. We're tracing it and we're rerouting it with a truth statement to the core of who you are, not based off your external situations. With all of this, we wanted to leave you guys with us as a resource. We'd love to serve you and to come into your community, whether that be your work life or like coming straight to your school, online. We do virtual and in-person options. But with these QR codes, one will send you to what we offer. It'll send you to our link tree and it'll highlight our what we offer tab. But I wanted to send you to the link tree because it has links to a lot of great resources and information, but also free affirmation cards that Lauren created for you to speak over yourself. Now, these affirmation cards are tailored to the life of an educator. So if you're not an educator, they still will be good for you, but you'll notice like, oh, okay, like I can see how this is tailored towards a teacher. If you can't scan these QR codes, I am putting the links in the chat box now. The one in the middle is the THT platform. That is just a preview of the Healthy Teacher platform that is a members only platform that we were talking about earlier, how you can get your workouts, your nutrition and mental health videos, fast food guides. There's like 200 plus resources on there. So we have a platform. Now with the platform, we didn't touch on this in the video, but I do want to state that everything that we did in creating the Healthy Teacher platform was centered around what does the life of an educator look like? So every example we use is tailored to and speaking to the life of an educator. And then you'll see on the far side is just our well-being course. We talked about that earlier. And we do have links to that in the What We Offer link tree. We will now open this up for questions.
I think we have
Yeah, we're good.
Thank y'all. That was amazing information. And I myself spent multiple years in the classroom, and it's very applicable what y'all are doing. And thank you. So we only have a couple minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A at this exact moment. If not, you are welcome to email us your questions and we will follow up with Lauren and Reagan. Otherwise, we've got the healthy teacher email going into the chat. That's not that those were the links. If y'all wouldn't mind ending your slide share so Erica can share hers for our upcoming webinars.
All right, so y'all are in for a treat this month. We're actually doing 2 webinars instead of 1, which is very exciting. So our next webinar for January is next week. It's gonna be with NAMI on Refresh and Reclaim Boundaries and Self-Care Workshop. So we are providing y'all with all the self-care resources that we can this month. So please take full advantage. If you can't watch the live webinar, just remember that you can record it. If you have not registered, please do so. And just want to say thank you again to the Healthy Teacher. So thank y'all so much for being here and sharing your resources with us. And I'm so glad that a majority of our folks were school-based folks, classroom teachers, so they can get this information firsthand from y'all. And I hope they take advantage of the additional resources that y'all have to share. And any information shared today, the links will also go out in the follow-up email that JC sends next week, along with evaluation. And if you complete the evaluation, you will receive your certificate. So thanks again, everyone. And we hope to see all of y'all again next week for our second self-care workshop for the month. Thanks, everybody. Bye.